Welcome to this week, October the 11th edition of The Truth. I'm John Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't tell you how much I appreciate our loyal listeners. And of course, I love to hear from you. You can always email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com. Let me know what's on your mind. I'll read your email and I'll respond. What a month it has been, almost 1 month to the minute that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I'm still in a state of disbelief. I just cannot believe that this has happened to one of the brightest people that I have ever known, full of so much promise and wisdom at a young age, with a wife and a family. I'm wrecked with emotion, sadness, anger, and a hefty journalistic curiosity and a humanitarian curiosity of what happened. I think we deserve to know. I, for one, need to know. So today we're talking about some shocking developments in Charlie Kirk's death. We'll be asking the question also, did Charlie Kirk actually cause the end of the Israeli-Palestinian war in Gaza? Well, stay tuned and I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. President Trump announced, as you know, a ceasefire in Gaza, and they are going to release the hostages on Monday. Now, what we don't know is how many of the hostages will be alive versus how many are dead. And I think that is going to really, it's going to be hard to maintain the ceasefire, I think, when we know those true numbers. We know that the people that have been held now for well over a year are not going to be in good health. We will hear the stories of their mistreatment, their malnutrition. It is scandalous behavior. Meanwhile, there has been a huge shifting of the sand underneath our feet in real time as we have watched a change in the attitudes of the American people toward Israel. Now, you're not allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to say that. I get away with it where others don't because of the size of my megaphone. But Charlie Kirk was saying it privately and somewhat publicly. Tucker Carlson has said it. Megyn Kelly has not really said it, except she refuses to condemn what Charlie Kirk said and what Tucker Carlson said. So she's therefore guilty by her omission of condemning their speech. And let me make it clear. They never moved away from their loyalty and allegiance to Israel. What they did was call into question the legitimacy of what they perceived to be genocide. Now, this becomes a very murky question, and it's very difficult to decide who has the white hats. But I'll give you a little of my insight, as I have consistently along the way. Make no mistake about it, Netanyahu is not a nice person, according to every account that I read. He is an international war criminal. He is wanted by the International Court for War Crimes. I'll tell you the thing that bothers me the most about Netanyahu. He is meddling inside the United States, overtly and covertly meddling inside the United States. Now, I think that is biting the hand that feeds you. I do not think that any foreign leader or nation should meddle inside the United States, even though we know that we are under siege virtually everywhere you look. And, you know, for the longest time, I wanted to identify a central enemy. For a long time, it was China. Now I'm starting to believe I have to add Russia to the list. Russia's still in the gray area. I mean, clearly they've never been our friend. We have wanted really since the Cold War to have to go to neutral corners where we don't mess with them and they don't mess with us. That is becoming increasingly more difficult because of the war with the Ukraine. So exactly where we stand with Russia is up in arms. We really don't want to be overtly adverse to Russia. It has been deemed to be in neither of our best interests to have Russia as an enemy, although judging by their actions, they are clearly an enemy of the United States. They were certainly an enemy under the Biden administration. But, where are we now versus Russia? I don't know. It seems that we're pretty adversarial. Clearly, the Ukraine, we compartmentalized it for years. With Putin's aggression, his talking out of one side of his mouth and acting totally different within the same day, it makes it very difficult to have any kind of a relationship with him. The only relationship we seek is one that we are attempting to bring peace to the Russian-Ukraine war. Our other enemies, well, the globalists, the people that meet in Davos every year to conspire to bring about a new world order. Then they're the people that want to create their own currency to compete with the US dollar. That would be Russia, China, Iran, Brazil. The list goes on. And then we have the enemy from within. Those may be the most concerning people that we have to worry about because they're legitimately inside the United States and they are acting in ways that no one condones. And I'm telling you, folks, it's really gotten serious. I'm telling you, it has really gotten serious. When non-political figures are assassinated and political figures, political candidates are calling for the use of violence, it's gotten really serious. I think it's time. What I want is for everybody to take a breath and that we have to agree as a nation, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, religious, Christian, Jews, agnostics, Muslims. Violence is not to be accepted. But I'm worried with Charlie Kirk's death about violence becoming an accepted form of protest in the United States. And we had this guy in Virginia, a Democrat for the Virginia Attorney General's position, something I know a little bit about because I ran for Attorney General in Georgia. This guy, Jay Jones, consciously contemplated violence against a political opponent, and he didn't stop there. He went on to include his children. Now, this guy is sick. Here are his texts, and here's a clip from Fox News.
President Trump is joining calls for Virginia's Democratic Attorney General candidate Jay Jones to drop out of his race after text messages resurface of him justifying a political assassination of the state's former GOP House Speaker, Todd Gilbert. We want to warn you, the messages are violent. Here you go. Jones writing in 2022 a quote, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew, with the two worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Joining us now is the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. Governor, he's a Democrat, I get it, but when you saw this, you thought what?
I thought this was a joke because no one could write this. I mean, no, this is demented. And here we have the Democrat candidate running for attorney general, the top cop in Virginia, wishing not only that he had 2 bullets to put in a guy's head, but then he wishes death on his children. And Todd Gilbert has small kids. And for Jay Jones to wish death on his small children is beyond belief. But that is where the violent left of the Democrat Party is. This is where these folks are.
All right, so let's get back to Charlie Kirk's political assassination and try and unpack a bit of what has occurred. So Charlie Kirk started making comments, and I don't have the exact comments. If I did, I would display them for you. But from what I have discerned, he was doubling down on his support of Israel. He did write Netanyahu a letter, a 5-page letter back in May, saying that he thought that Israel was losing the messaging war and needed to change its tactics, particularly in getting to young people. I took that, and I think Netanyahu took that as an expression of support. But then he started questioning the war and young people's reaction to the war with Hamas and the Palestinians in Gaza. Now, I said earlier it was hard to discern who the white hats are. Let's just put it into a bit of perspective. Since the beginning of World War II and beyond, Jews have been persecuted. According to what Charlie Kirk said in one of his visits to a college campus, half of the Jews were eliminated. That is an atrocity that the world is still recovering from, and I don't know that we will ever recover from it, but certainly the Jewish people will never recover from it psychologically. And it was my perspective up until perhaps the last 2 years that criticizing Jewish people was forbidden, that it was just something that we as a humanitarian people collectively had an unwritten rule that you just would not criticize Jews. They have been persecuted. In World War II, Hitler annihilated a large number of the Jewish population. We all, as a nation, have great empathy for Jews and Israel. But it really goes beyond that as we're starting to peer deeper. Jews can account for 2% of the population of America. Yet, they control 20 to 30% of the wealth. I don't mean all wealth. I mean of the upper 1%. Jewish people account for 20 to 30% of the people on the Forbes list or Fortune list. Now get this, and I've only learned. I've always had the perception that Jewish people dominated the media. As I have been looking deeper and researching, I have come to learn that Jews dominate 80% of both the management and ownership of the media. Charlie Kirk started speaking about his concerns about the war in Gaza and the aggressiveness, let's say, of Israel and Netanyahu. He went to a function in the Hamptons in the weeks leading up to his death. And he was cornered by Bill Ackman, who is a billionaire hedge fund manager, chief executive of a big hedge fund company. And he bet, I don't know what he said to Charlie Kirk. What I do know is that after that event, Charlie Kirk wrote private texts saying that he was being pressured to back off of his comments about Israel and their war in Gaza. And this is as best as I can put it together. Now, one of the people that are doing the best journalism around this, and I hate to promote my competition, except she's really not my competition because she's at a level way above my pay grade so far. I am aspiring to have a megaphone as large as Candace Owens. But Candace has done a phenomenal job of researching and reporting on this, and I just hope to get it right. Let's just go to this clip from Candace. I'll let you hear it from her directly.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh, I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
A day later, Colvett spoke about the veracity of the leaked text messages. Take a look.
And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there. I first want to say the reason I didn't share that screen grab publicly is because it was a private exchange, and I felt like it didn't necessarily comport with things that were already public. I wanted to not betray my friend's trust in that way.
So Charlie basically told Candace and others in text and presumably in person or directly to them, whether in person or by phone, that one of his largest supporters had pulled $2 million a year because Charlie invited Tucker Carlson to a Turning Point USA event and would not remove him from the platform. And Charlie's reaction to that is, I'm not going to be bought, and I'm not going to be told what to say, and I'm back off my support of Israel. I don't know what that means. I don't think it meant that he's backing off his support of Israel. I think he was just going to back off his support of the war in Gaza with Israel, as have a lot of people. Now, I am very much conflicted on this, ladies and gentlemen, because when Hamas went into that music festival and killed 2,000 Israelis and took, I don't remember the number, 200 hostages, I believe, of which they're still holding 47. And a lot of the hostages have been returned, but they've been returned dead. We know that they've committed atrocities against women, little children, pregnant women. I cannot have sympathy for Hamas. But does that justify their elimination from the face of the earth? It is a very hard conversation to have. And I look at it from two ways. One, the Jews have been persecuted for decades, if not a century or more. And Hamas has said they want to eliminate Israel. Now, how can you tolerate an enemy who wants to eliminate you? The natural human response is to get them before they get you. So how discerning who the white hats are, I think, is very difficult. I understand also that Israel has such power within the United States that some of our leaders, perhaps even Donald Trump himself, is afraid of Netanyahu. Now, I don't know what that means, but I read it the other day. Afraid of him how? Politically? Physically? I don't know. But the conclusion that I'm coming to is, thank God that we've got a ceasefire that is presumably going to occur in the Middle East. Kudos Donald Trump, and kudos Netanyahu and Hamas if it actually happens. My prediction is that when we see the number of prisoners that are going to be returned and get their stories and see their physical condition, and we learn how many hostages have been brutally and savagely killed, I don't know if the ceasefire will hold. I hope that it does. I think that it's time to stop the war. But the point that I've been trying to make is that discerning who the white hats are in this conversation is very difficult. I had a radio interview that I was a guest on last week, and the host asked me if I thought that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. And I said, my instincts and based on what I have learned, lead me to believe that he did not. Sitting here today, I don't think that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. Now I think he was on the roof. I think he had an AK weapon. I don't think he broke it down in a split second, got it off the roof, and then reassembled it in the woods. That makes no sense. No, I don't buy the narrative. I don't. So who did kill Charlie Kirk? They asked me who my suspects were. I gave them in no particular order, but I said that Charlie had discovered financial irregularities within Turning Point USA. I do believe, based on what I've read and what I've now heard from reliable people, you can see them on YouTube. Go listen to Candace Owens. Go listen to Redacted. You can listen to Tucker. There's a lot of smoke about enemies inside Turning Point and perhaps financial improprieties. Maybe there is a bad actor or actors that have infiltrated Turning Point USA. I watched 2 Navy SEALs who are expert marksmen say that they could not have taken the shot, that they would not have been capable of making the shot, especially with that precision. When Charlie was talking, he was bobbing and weaving. He was leaning forward. He was leaning backward. He'd tilt to the side. They said that equated to a moving target. From 200 yards, that sight would have been moving all over the place if in little circles, if the target was perfectly still. And to be able to shoot Charlie in the neck with that precision was virtually impossible from that distance. They did not buy that Tyler Robinson had made the shot. There are other people that have done ballistics geometry, and it appears that the shot more than likely Tyler Robinson would have been at Charlie's 11 o'clock. I've seen people who are experts say that it came from 1 o'clock and much closer. I also watched a video just last night that suggested that the shot was made from behind with a guy holding what appeared to be a camera that was actually a gun. And right now, that frankly is my number one leaning, I'll say. Then there is the deep state. My instinct is not telling me that the deep state assassinated Charlie Kirk, although you could make an argument that they should be suspects because Charlie was having an impact. My apolitical wife, who I love and adore, politics is not her thing, she said that of course they killed Charlie. She didn't define who they is, because he was having such a tremendous impact. He was registering tens of thousands of young people who had never voted before to come and vote, and they were largely registering in vast numbers as Republicans. He was having an impact. So maybe it was the deep state, maybe the Dems. There's no evidence of that, but they should certainly be checked off the list of suspects. And then the announcer said, well, surely you're not going to come up with some cockamamie theory that it was Mossad and the Israelis. And I said, well, actually, that was going to be my next statement, that they could not be eliminated as suspects because people inside the United States, billionaires, had been talking to Charlie and wanting him to back off of his comments on Israel. And they were fighting mad that he had included Tucker Carlson in a Turning Point USA event. And they wanted him to pull Tucker from future events. And Charlie's reaction was, damn them, I am not going to be bribed, and I'm not going to be controlled. That's not Israel, but it's Israel supporters. Were they acting in concert with the leadership of Israel? Benjamin Netanyahu is not reported to be a nice fellow. I don't like his frequent visits to the United States. We have sent trillions of dollars to Israel. We are their we do defend them as we should. It has gone from benevolence on our part and strategic defense on our part to becoming an expectation and an entitlement on the part of Israel and its leadership and its supporters inside the United States. And there is where I draw the line. The United States government should have the free will to make its own decisions based on what is in the best interest of the American people. Humanitarian influence on our decision making and our thought process should certainly be a part of the equation, but I just flat out do not like the intense meddling. Here again, once again, we see the influence of special interest in our politics, and I think that it's all bad. We'll talk about that at another time. But I'm going to leave it at that with Israel. But what I'm most concerned about in a segue from that is, as I started this segment with this cannot become normalized as a new form of political discourse in this country. There have been political assassinations, John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, Governor Wallace. He lived, but he lived in a wheelchair as a paraplegic, or at least paralyzed, losing his mobility for the rest of his life. Malcolm X. Political assassinations have always been present, but it seems like they are picking up momentum. As I pointed out with Jay Jones from Virginia, vocalizing and endorsing the use of violence as an acceptable means in politics. And the liberals, the far left socialist liberals, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. That cannot be accepted. That has to be universally condemned. And I call on each of you who are listening or watching to this broadcast today to be very vocal in condemning political violence. And that brings us to the decision by President Trump to send the National Guard to Chicago, to Portland, and Governor Abbott joining him in sending 200 Texas National Guardsmen to Chicago. Governor Pritzker says that it is an overreach, that it is an abuse of the separation of powers, and is a usurping Illinois' authority to govern itself. Here's the point. Murders in Chicago are at an epidemic level, just like they were in Washington. Murders in Washington, D.C., and I commend and congratulate the mayor of Washington, who didn't like the National Guard at first, but came to embrace it, and murders fell to effectively zero. Overnight. That will happen in Chicago. Get the hell out of the way, Pritzker. You demented socialist, communist, I don't know what you are. I know you're demented. To be utilizing the death of your own citizenry as some kind of a political football is shameful. Shame on you. Embrace it. Embrace it. And end the violence on your streets. And ditto in Portland. And now we've got a constitutional crisis of such. A federal judge said, well, you can send troops into Portland, but I'm going to limit you by the numbers of people that you can send. So I don't know the numbers. I don't know where the line is, but by limiting the numbers of National Guardsmen, you put the National Guardsmen that you're sending in at risk because there's the potential of not having an adequate force to defend the streets. Now, the political leaders in Portland say, oh, it's an invasion. You're coming in to invade our sovereign state. But the fact of the matter is, you call it protest. They're violent protests, and they have burned federal buildings, and they have killed people. That is no longer a protest, and you won't stop it. So we will. And I am 100% in favor of the National Guard being sent to these places. I commend President Trump for having the guts to do it and the determination to do it. And you know what? He is not obeying the court order, and nor should he, because they have abused their authority by making a decision for which they lack the authority. The President of the United States is the commander-in-chief. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. And there's this little constitutional challenge that they've got called the Supremacy Clause. They have no right to interfere with the president's decision to enforce the laws and to impose peace and safety for the citizens of the states, in spite of the fact that their government will not do the job themselves. That's my perspective. That's the truth as I know it. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great show lined up for you. I hope you'll stay tuned. We come to you every Saturday on the John Fredericks Radio Network, 8 cities, 22 AM and FM radio stations. We also come to you on cdm.press on their 13 digital platforms. They also take our feed and resend it out on their platforms on social media. You can watch us on Getter, Rumble, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and X. Did I say Facebook Live, Anthony? I think I did. But we're on all those platforms. You can come and interact with us on getter.com right now on the John Fredericks page. And while you're there, search for the John Gordon Truth page and subscribe to our page. And then we can bring you the live stream straight on our platform on Getter. We've got thousands of people on Getter right now that are interacting with us. Come on over. You can watch the live stream there, and we'd love to have you. So now let's get right to our first interview. But first, I've got to tell you that today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. Adam Hardage is a return visitor and guest on The Truth. Adam, welcome.
Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate you having me.
It's nice to have you back. So Adam, for our listeners who do not recall, is an author. He's written The Alpha Blueprint. He is a husband, a father, and a former CIA operations, what do you call it? Operations
officer, operative, case officer. They're all kind of interchangeable terms. But yeah, it was quite a career. I'm very blessed to have done it, to have had the experience, and to have come out the other end, not too much worse for wear.
Well, thank you for what your service. And can we talk about the CIA for a bit?
For briefly, sure.
Briefly, you mean for the next 3 hours? All right. So, how many people work for the CIA in round numbers?
I have no idea.
100,000?
I have no idea. I've heard that it's upwards, like north of 10,000. I don't know. I don't know.
My suspicion is way north of 10,000, but what do I know? And nobody knows the budget except for about 5 people, plus the director of the CIA and a handful of others. I don't even know if the president knows. I suspect that he would.
I'll put it this way, John. When I worked in station, I could be working on a project at my little cubicle, and the guy next to me would be working on a different project, and we would not discuss the work that we were doing. It's that
secrecy abounds.
Yeah, it does. It's, it's a professional thing. And that's not to say that you don't hear things around the water cooler, people don't talk, exchange things, lunch, whatever else. But yeah, for the most part, it's very professional, very buttoned up, very stovepiped kind of organization.
So if I could, allow me to just share my perspective for a moment. I've been highly critical of the CIA. That makes me a little nervous. I'm starting my car with a broomstick these days, but I don't think I have a sufficient megaphone to cause them any major concern. But when I do that, I have a tinge of guilt in my heart because of people like you. I know there are legions of honest, faith-based, patriotic, hardworking, selfless people who work for the CIA. I truly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But my appreciation is diminished by the fact that I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that Allen Dulles orchestrated and led the assassination of the 35th president of the United States. The evidence is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And that Lyndon Johnson was probably the puppet master, and J. Edgar Hoover helped lead the cover-up. Now, I'm sorry, I cannot get past that. And so, because inherently, by definition, the CIA has to operate in the shadows, and I get that. They have to operate in top secret. There is no rationale or justification for having taken out a president of the United States. So now my antennas are up. Anytime something happens, mm-hmm. my knee-jerk reaction is intelligence. Epstein. The rumors abound. 9/11. I mean, who can explain Building 7? Who could pull that off were it not for somebody within our own government who has the ability to control the narrative and cover up in the aftermath?
I actually address a couple of those issues in my new book, in The Alpha Blueprint, because it's all about preparing the next generation for basically a world of lies, a world of deceit, a world powered by AI and enabled with information to an extent where it becomes almost impossible to tell truth from fiction. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. What you said about the agency. I look at the agency with a very big jaundiced eye. I mean, having been part of it, and I will tell you, I left under not great circumstances because I got rolled up by the same sort of political corruption that DNI Tulsi Gabbard discussed at her confirmation hearing. In fact, I was part of the exact same covert action program that she called out by name. I'm not going to get into other details because I'm a lower rank type individual that, I don't have great legal counsel, so I'm not sure what I can say or where I stand on that.
Well, we respect that. And I appreciate your being honest with us. That's fine. I get it.
I completely agree. I mean, we have to have honest, rational discussions and debate. I mean, Tower 7 did not fall on its own. I'm sorry, it just didn't. In fact, I even literally address it in here, in this book. It said right here, it's 50 more lies. Number 1, 50 more lies that they will tell you. Tower 7 did not fall on its own.
Good for you. It says,
fell as a result of office fire. So the point is, we should question our government. We should question if there's a need for everything to be secret, then that's individuals acting like they're above the law and it doesn't apply to them. And that is ripe for corruption. As we all know, power breeds corruption. Absolute power breeds, corruption. Absolutely. The agency is absolutely a place that needs oversight. There are great people. But the way I think of all of the, let's call it the legacy of ashes. There was actually a book written called The Legacy of Ashes about the CIA. And it talks a lot about kind of what you were even talking about, some of the conspiracies, the cover-ups. And if you think about it, I mean, the agency was the one that came up with the moniker of conspiracy theorist after the JFK assassination to make sure they shut down, any sort of investigation or looking into it. Because if you're bullied by the mob, and you ask a question and everybody else makes fun of you. Well, we all learned in grade school and in college and stuff growing up that it's not necessarily fun to be the butt of the joke. So a lot of people, try and avoid that more than anything. I would just say that in the world that we're going into, the agency has a lot of great people. America has a lot of great people, but it's at the people level. So the problem in my experience tends to come in with senior levels of leadership that are given extreme authority and power. And so I don't blame the agency for any of the nefarious things that it was involved with. I blame the leadership, the people who would have been at the top. So you're talking about, your directors of operations, your chiefs of station. I don't know. I mean, I'm not castigating anybody in particular. I'm just saying that's where those things would lie. Your deputy director operations standpoint. I mean, they can stovepipe anything they want and they could do a huge program and we would have no idea what the black budget or who's involved in it or what they're doing. So, I mean, the question that you're kind of raising centrally comes down to oversight, effective oversight.
I totally agree. And
there just never has been. The CIA has never had effective oversight. The HIPSI and the SISI are completely, incapable of enacting that oversight. But that's where we are.
I think that it is self-evident. James Angleton, who is the former well-known assistant director of the CIA in charge of intelligence, I think. I don't know. He was high up. He said that just look around this room. These are the people who are going straight to hell when they die. And I unfortunately look forward to sharing a room with them. I mean, I know you're a person of faith. I believe in God very strongly.
100%.
And that in itself keeps me on a path. It keeps me in between the lines, I hope. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. That's not the point. The point is I'm guided by my faith, and I very much want to spend eternity in heaven. I don't know whether I'll get a shot there or not. I'm working real hard to do it. But do these people lack faith? Do they lack the ability to see into the afterlife and know that they are condemning themselves to an eternity of hell's fire?
I think at its simplest, it comes down to that people in DC at senior leadership levels are highly liberal and progressive at a rate of 90+% of all leadership across any of the agencies. So if you go and you speak to a senior leader in DC, the odds that you're talking to, a left-wing nut job is pretty high. Now they cover it pretty well, but when you peel back kind of some of the layers, you get to this sort of defeatist, nihilistic view on life where there is no eternal whatever, or everything is subjective, and when you die, that's it. So therefore, it's all about earthly power, earthly control. We got to get ours now. We got to win. They have to lose. It becomes that sort of power dynamic instead of a dynamic that like you or I would have, which would be, I want the best for you. I want the best for my family. I think, freedom is the way. I think God reigns supreme, all that. So I just think you have a fundamentally different view about life. And so there's also kind of a smug, they don't really mean it when they say like, oh, we're going to hell. It's kind of an elitist joke. It's like, oh, we're kind of compromising ourselves now, but we're all good people. We're all really good people.
So they rationalize their behavior.
Well, I think all humans do,
I think that, is that too broad a brush?
I should say all humans that have not tried to humble themselves before the Lord Probably.
Bingo.
Yeah, there you go.
That is it. You know, my youngest son, who I absolutely love and adore, and I probably today have the best relationship with that we've had in his 38 years on life. But I'll tell you, and he'd be the first to admit it, he's given me every gray hair in my head. I mean, that kid tested the limits at every level, whether it was at school or the Boy Scouts or in church, anywhere. He's a good kid, but he was a mischievous kid and anti-authority. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, you know, can I just digress for a minute? This story is too good to waste. We had a babysitter. 3 girls actually babysat our kids who were sisters, and they lived behind us. And their parents were 2 of the most devout people that I've ever known. And guess what? All 3 daughters grew up to be believers and very Christian and very firm in their beliefs, and they married good guys. And so Grayson, our youngest son, was a ring bearer in one of the daughters' weddings. She married a great guy, a quarterback for, I think, Duke or one of the Ivy League or near Ivy League schools, and great athlete, great guy. And the other daughter married a football player for the New Orleans Saints. Just a great family. Anyway, Grayson was the ring bearer. They had lost touch, didn't see him for like 20 years, and just out of nowhere, she showed up at the sandwich shop that Grayson was eating lunch in. They ended up grabbing a sandwich together and sitting down and talking for the next 2 hours. And she started sharing her faith with him. He has now become the most devout, Christian, centered person I've ever seen. And I've never seen someone be on a more narrow path and focused on his religion and his work. And it's just so gratifying to me as his father, who played no role in it. I give it all to the babysitter. And that's how just life works in such mysterious ways. I cannot chalk that up to coincidence. I truly believe that God sent that babysitter back into Grayson's life and got him on the straight and narrow. And so, that, as I was saying earlier, that puts guardrails on all of us and our behavior. And it causes you, I think, to not rationalize your bad behavior because you know God's watching and you can't pull the wool over God's eyes.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, how can we get this nation back on track? I think Donald Trump is a believer. I know he goes to church, not as often as he could, but I think he certainly is there on holidays. And I hear him talk about faith, yeah. But have we lost that as part of our culture?
I don't believe so. I believe that there's a huge ongoing revival around the country. I think a lot of people are coming to Jesus, especially in light of the Charlie Kirk assassination. I saw that Turning Point's followers increased, I think, something like tenfold.
Yes.
And
contributors, donors.
Yeah, well, not only that, yeah, but also followers. Yeah, I mean, and so there's so many things I've seen about people saying, I haven't read my Bible and since I was a kid, or I went back to church this last week, or I've realized, I've got to change my ways. So I think that there is an ongoing revival, and if you look at the parallels between how Charlie Kirk's end happened and the end of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the similarities are not too subtle. You've got a guy that used to go into the public square and he would argue ideas and he would tell people that they were living in sin. I'm talking about Jesus now, and they despised the truth so much, and they despised his words so much that they killed him publicly and shamed him in front of everyone. And so you have the same exact story with Charlie Kirk. You got a guy that goes into the public square to debate ideas, tell people that they're living in sin. The crowd hates him so much, they kill him for it. It's, that's pretty much the guarantee of the Christian path. It's, Christ even talks about it often. Can you drink from this cup that I'm drinking from? Can you go where I go? Can you do these things? And I think, those of us who have been called, and I feel like I've been called by the Lord, I'm not really sure for what, but I think I'm supposed to be, a thought leader and a coach and somebody to help prepare, my children and the next generation for a very sort of upside down world, and a world where truth is almost impossible to discern. And that's literally what I wrote this book on. I mean, the Alpha Blueprint is preparing the next generation for an AI future. And I talk about in the book, we're already at the point where, it's almost impossible to tell if the video you're seeing is real or if it is AI or if it has been doctored, edited. And it's just going to get harder and harder. I would say within 2 years, it will be impossible to know whether or not what you're seeing on a screen is reality or not. And it will probably, most likely, you'll be unemployed. I don't mean you, I mean a person. I think that AI is going to involve so much societal upheaval in destabilizing the workforce that we're going to have a real period of unrest. So I'm trying to talk to people about it now and explain to them how to weather the what I see as a coming storm. So, and that is live in truth, follow the way, the truth, and the life, i.e. Jesus, and get yourselves and your families right. I truly believe we're at that time where this call it's a crucial call.
I could not agree more. And I'm what's known as an early adapter. I've been using ChatGPT and now Grok for over a year, and it is miraculous. And I really enjoy the thought of having the potential to get my own Optimus robot. But you do highlight the downside to all that. I've led young men for 35 years in my business. We by nature recruit a lot of young people, usually right out of college or shortly thereafter, and that's I'll tell you that's as a challenge. But we talk to them about goals and motivation, but overriding all of that, I think that we all have a basic intrinsic need to have purpose in our life. And if these robots take away our purpose, then that I really worry about that, because I link purpose with moral compass and divinity as well. And I think they're inextricably linked. And as we usher in an age of abundance, which I truly do believe we're on the cusp of, I follow this stuff more than probably I should. Every day of my life, I am watching YouTube videos on AI, robotics, and what is coming. The autonomous car, for instance. It is as exciting as it is fearsome, because if it falls into the wrong hands, we really could be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, I've had this discussion with some other thought leaders, influencers, podcasters, social media types that are completely against the idea of AI and everything, and the use of it in our society. And it's mark of the beast. You got to stay away from it and all this stuff. Okay, be that as it may, I would submit that the greater danger is not having the good guys involved in the development of AI.
100%.
And just giving up that fight and letting, the world that says men can have babies and, TikTok is just a harmless app, letting those people run the algorithms. And if you do that, you're toast. Your society is done, because no one will be able to discern truth. And it's already hard enough as it is. So what I tell people these days is, if you're not standing right in front of me and I can't physically touch you, then I don't have 100% belief in whatever it is that I'm supposedly experiencing, you know? So I think human to human contact is going to become extremely important from a truth validation standpoint going forward. And your show, The Truth with John Gordon, that word truth is a very dangerous word. It's probably gotten more people killed than anything, because the devil is a liar and the devil hates the truth. And Nietzsche said it well when he expressed that the measure of a man's character is how much truth they can ultimately accept. And I've just found that most people have pretty limited character. And those that can accept truth are considered the far right-winger conspiracy theorist nut jobs.
Well, that's just bizarre to me. I mean, I think there is a healthy amount of reality in what you say, Adam, but to think that we cannot all come together and say the lowest common denominator in this country and in our world should be the truth. I mean, it's as self-evident to me as that you need oxygen to breathe and water in your system to keep you alive. I mean, who would not want truth to be the lowest common denominator? I mean, that just seems ludicrous to me that we cannot, as a society, agree on that simple principle.
Well, you come down to the fundamental value set of a society. Are we a secular, subjective, relative type culture, or are we, a constitutional, God-fearing, humble and honest people? And I think that's the war that you're seeing. It is a cultural war of, defining what is America and what is going to be the character of America. And I'm certainly, I believe that, God wins in the end. We're going to have some drama to get there, but, he's never failed and he's not going to fail now. So.
Well, I think your point about, the good guys and the bad guys in charge of AI really resonates. Tucker Carlson did a very compelling interview with Sam Altman just recently.
Yeah,
I was in the audience in the All In Summit in Los Angeles 3 weeks ago when Elon Musk appeared there. And those two are championing the AI services, namely ChatGPT is Altman's and Musk is Grok.
Yeah.
And I can just tell you, if I had to choose between the two, I would want Elon Musk arbitrating the decisions on what's good and what's bad and what should be inherent in Grok versus Sam Altman and ChatGPT, because that guy gives me the creeps.
Yeah.
So if our listeners haven't seen that interview, I would really commend you to go to YouTube, search Tucker Carlson and Sam Altman and watch it. That guy cannot be in charge of the future of mankind, or else we're in a world of hurt. But how do you regulate it? How do you say you're good and you're bad? I mean, we can start with the Bible. Say it says, "Judge ye lest ye be not judged." I mean, how do you reconcile those two?
I think that everything. Let's talk about business as usual. I think business as usual is over from a society standpoint. Meaning, I think the speed of information and the speed of technology and the ability for new technologies to be created and put into place and adopted by the masses moves so much faster than the regulatory authorities, than the government could keep up, than your legislative bodies they got no chance of trying to, how do you even regulate AI?
Yeah.
If you're a congressman, one of however 500 and whatever we have Congress people, you're going to sit there and be like, okay, I got an idea about this AI thing. Let's write a new law on it. Let's get some lobbyists to write some laws. Maybe we'll vote on it in 6 months. Well, in 6 months, they're already 100 more steps behind.
Well, my formulation is pretty simplistic. I think we just look at the laws we've already got and we rewrite them so that they are relevant in today's context. Like the law, what is it? Section 203, is that it? The law that gives media immunity from publishing false information. And it's not, the problem is it says immunity from all false information. It should have an exception, a minimum of except for when you publish false information knowingly. But even that, I believe, is exempt from any kind of accountability.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, this is kind of one of those things that you want to talk conspiracies. I think that one has legs. I do believe that was an Obama special gift to America, given to us, on kind of one of those, let's get this law passed on Christmas Eve when nobody's watching type things.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, people wonder why they can't get any honest information out of the media. Well, because you made it legal for them to lie. So there's no authority. There's no accountability. People are going to have to stop relying on the government and the legacy media to tell them the truth, because it's probably not going to happen. It hasn't happened historically, and it's probably not going to start happening now. So, and that's why, if you want truth, read my book. So, The Alpha Blueprint.
Well, I want an autographed copy of the book. I'll buy it and mail it to you. How about that?
There you go. That'll work.
With a returned autograph. I appreciate your candor and your being real more than you know. So let's talk about Charlie Kirk. You alluded to him a moment ago, and the University of Utah Valley, I think, is that the name of it, Anthony, something like that. But that horrible tragedy that occurred 2 weeks ago now that we all watched in real time on live television, it is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. I knew Charlie. We had a good relationship with one another. I wasn't close to him, but I saw him 2 or 3 times a year for the last 8 years. And he's been on The Truth with us about 8 months ago. And he legitimately was one of the smartest people I've ever known, unqualifiedly. And I'm not saying this just to speak well of the departed.
No, I think he was one of the greatest minds of our time. I really do. I think
absolutely brilliant. He would have put Einstein to shame, I think. And he was absolutely convicted in his faith.
Yeah.
And it came up in virtually every conversation that I ever had with him or heard him engage in. And so I respected him a lot. And he was on a mission. My wife, who is the least political person I know, said they killed him because he was having an impact. He was having too much of an impact.
That's correct.
He went out and he converted these young people, and he didn't convert them. He told them the truth and exposed them to the truth and to God. And a lot of them chose to join Turning Point and register as Republicans and vote. I think that has a lot to do with the outcome of the 2024 election. And so he was having too much success for somebody to be able to bear. You have any theories? Let me just state unqualifiedly, I do not believe the narrative. I do not believe the narrative. I'm not even sure that Tyler Robinson, I saw 2 retired Navy SEALs yesterday who were expert marksmen say they could not have made the shot. 200 yards with all the pressure, the wind, the crowds, all the things that brought to bear. And, I'm not a marksman. I shoot shotguns because I love to hunt, but I like to hunt anything that flies, basically. I've killed some deer, and I won't go into that anymore. But the last deer I shot, he turned and looked at me and was like, "Why'd you do that?" And it was beautiful. I've never picked up and that was with a bow and arrow. So I've given it up. It didn't feel right to me. But anyway, I know I'm making a lot of people upset. Don't mean to. You do you and I'll do me. But Birds, I have no mercy on. Don't ask me why. But they said that with all the pressures that were there, he just couldn't have made the shot. He could not have dismantled the gun and then put it back together in the middle of the woods. What's that about? So they both hypothesized that the gun was left in the woods, and that wasn't the gun that was used to kill Charlie. So that would be easy enough to determine, wouldn't it?
You know, I'm not a forensic expert. I want to stay away from adjudicating Charlie Kirk's death, whether it was, I mean, by virtue of, first off, let me tell you, I've been out for 8 years of government service. So any information I hear or pontificate on is based on all the same open source stuff that everybody else hears.
Sure.
Does it seem fishy to me? Yes,
that.
it absolutely seems. It raises a lot of questions, but you know, I don't. I'm not focused on. I figure there's going to be enough smart people that are going to ask all the questions that can get to the bottom of that. I don't know if the truth will ever come out. It's been successfully buried for most of all of our lives, just about all the big things. So where that is, I don't know. Ultimately, the thing that I come down on is that we will all be tested, and those of us who are called must have the courage of our conviction and the calling to stand up and do our part until, you know, the Lord calls us home, type thing. I don't know how much of the Charlie Kirk incident was real or not real. I was not there. I was not, you know, I haven't spoken to anybody who was there in person. I just, it obviously raises a whole lot of questions. But I think at the end of the day, it's just another symptom of the world that we're coming into, where truth is going to be very, very, very difficult to parse. So that's why, I mean, and famously in the words of our former President Obama, you know, we in times of trouble like this, we turn to our God and our guns. So I guess I'm guilty of that. Turn into my God and my guns. So.
Well, I see you've got quite an assortment behind you there, so you must be somewhat of a marksman.
I was a military guy for a long time before I joined the agency, and so most of my background is in the world of special operations. I was Air Force Academy graduate, class of '97, and then after 9/11 happened, I crossed over and joined Army Special Forces, and then ultimately got picked up by the intelligence community to go become an operations officer. So I've done more than some and less than many. So,
well, you have had a fascinating career, and you've offered this new book, The Alpha Blueprint, and it's about AI and how to raise children in the age of AI. Do you have any parting wisdom or insights for us that you'd like to share on, if you're a parent, how you're going to raise your children in this new age?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave you with kind of the central theme that I think is really the takeaway that parents should be thinking about right now. And so in the book, I talk about, I don't care if you're ethically against AI, if you're morally against AI, if you're for it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a bit to me. The fact of the matter is AI is here, it's here to stay. And it's going to be the reality that we all have to live with and deal with. So, what has the rise of AI has democratized PhD level intelligence globally for about $20 a month. So, what that means is that the 15-year-old kid in Lagos, Nigeria, can now write a business plan on par with a Harvard MBA, you know, that's got the best advisors and instructors in the world. And so that has leveled the playing field intellectually for all of us. And so if that is the case, I think of the analogy of NASCAR. And in NASCAR, theoretically, every car is tuned the same. So the engines are the same size, the same displacement, the tires are the same weight, the same balance, same size, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a car, in theory, should not be enough to win a race in NASCAR. That's the whole point of NASCAR. The race is won by the driver themselves and the individual inputs and the choices that the driver makes. So that's what I talk about in the book a lot, as I say, look, in the world that we're all going into, we're all going to have a quantum capability at our fingertips, a supercomputer, just literally like pick up, bleep, and there's your supercomputer answer back to you in 5 seconds. So we're all going to be gifted with this super level of intelligence. But what do you do with that? How do you use it? And how do you maintain relevancy in a world where jobs are getting replaced faster than companies can even write new job descriptions? And I would say that those who are going to win in the coming world of an AI-centric, AI-powered world are going to be those individuals that can take the time to really learn who they are authentically inside themselves, can embrace their creativity, can nurture that, and can learn to use the tools of AI to accomplish what their own specific path would have them be. So in other words, I'm not saying people should go out in 5 years, they should go to college and plan to go work for a Fortune 500 company for 30 years and retire with a 401k. That world is gone. It's not going to happen. So the best thing that they could do, in my opinion, is to leverage the tools and understand that there's going to be more economic upheaval over the next few years than most people, I think, have even started to grasp. And those who will succeed in the coming environment will be the ones that learn to use the tools of AI at their disposal, that understand the pitfalls and the ways to not use it, and to how to not put their brain in a jar and let AI do their thinking for them, but allow AI to make them a 1000x more powerful individual by virtue of the fact that they can work at 10 times the speed that they used to, or they can produce at a level that's much higher than they used to.
Tell us what you mean.
So, okay, let's go back to the kid. I use the analogy of the 15-year-old in Lagos, Nigeria, can write a business plan on par with a 25-year-old Harvard MBA with the best instructors' minds in the world. So that kid 1000x'd himself by leveraging the tools of AI. But if that kid just lets AI do its thinking for him, then he will fall flat on his face when he stands in front of a real human and has to defend a position or talk about the plan or whatever else. So my central premise is that yes, AI will 1000x your intellectual capability and your ability to produce eye-wateringly beautiful reports and everything else. But at the same time, if that individual doesn't have the authentic knowledge and internal, if they are not authentic, they will not succeed. And that, I believe, is going to be probably the biggest cry in the future, is authenticity. People who can leverage the tools at their disposal, but also can understand and embrace truth, know and speak truth, and live as creative, authentic people. That is going to be, I think, the real determiner for those who have a successful future and those who do not in the world of AI. That's my personal ticket.
Well, I think those are I think those are great insights to leave the interview on, and we really appreciate it. I remember enjoying our last conversation, and this conversation has been every bit as much fulfilling. So thank you, Adam Hardage. He's written a book, The Alpha Blueprint, and you can get it. I bet you can get it on Amazon. Yeah, you sure can, because I've got the advertisement right here. And how's the book doing?
It's doing great. We just published it on the 23rd, so it's been out for 7 days now. it's going great.
Yeah, you can add one more to your win column, and we really do appreciate your time today and your great insights as well as your service to our country. And we note that the foreword to your new book is written by Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who has also been on The Truth. Have a great rest of your weekend, and thank you so much, Adam Hardage.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John.
September 11th, 2001 was one of those days that stand out in the minds of most Americans. It was the day that we were savagely attacked in the heart of New York City and the Twin Towers that stood as symbolisms of capitalism, and they were savagely attacked. Well, I know where I was that day. You remember where you were? I looked on in absolute horror and disbelief, and the sadness that swept over me was hard to shake out of my psyche. I accepted the official narrative for what it was until recently. Now I've come to learn that there are more questions than answers possibly surrounding the 9/11 attacks. Well, I'm not the only one. Richard Gage, he's an architect and a member of the American Institute of Architects. He also founded and is the former CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. He now wants to find out the truth surrounding 9/11, and he's doing that with the help of his wife, Gail. Richard Gage, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John. Awesome to be here with you.
Where were you on 9/11, 2001? You were asleep, probably.
I was up, actually, on my way to getting ready to go to work, and I was watching the TV, and I couldn't believe that a tower had been hit by a plane, a terrible accident. And then I saw on TV the second tower hit, and I'm going, this is something different here. And that horror unfolded. But even then, John, I could not figure out what was going on. What I was seeing was not a building collapsing or two buildings collapsing. I was seeing something very different. I was seeing a series of hundreds of explosions that we're going to look at. I didn't even know, not even that evening, that a third tower came down on 9/11. And we're going to talk about that today too. A skyscraper that was not hit by a plane that came down anyway.
So I accused Richard of being asleep on 9/11. For our listeners, that's because he lives on what some of us call the left coast, but he is from San Francisco. So I went through a similar mental processing as you. I was aware that a glider had run into the Statue of Liberty maybe a month or two before 9/11. And my secretary, who was a real sweet gal at the time that this happened, grabbed me in the hallway and said, "John, come here. I've got something to tell you." And I said, "What, Jenna?" She said, "Well, an airliner has crashed into the Twin Tower." And I said, "Well, that's just impossible. That would just never happen." And she said, "Well, that's what they're reporting on the news." And I said, "Well, it may have been somebody tooling around in a Cessna 152 or a Cessna 172 that had a collision with the tower, but no airliner would crash into the Twin Tower." And the words had not escaped my mouth before I looked up and saw on television the second jetliner crashing into the Twin Tower. And I was beyond, they talk about the 4 stages of grief. First, disbelief. Mm-hmm. And that was clearly, I was in denial. And then secondly, just overwhelming remorse and sadness that this could have happened. But you're saying that you perceived in real time, in the moment, that it wasn't just the airplanes crashing into the buildings that brought them down.
I'm telling you that my eyes saw that, but it took me 5 years before I became aware of an alternative theory. And until that time in 2006, I couldn't cognize what my eyes were seeing. I just put it all away for 5 years. But then I heard David Ray Griffin on the radio. He's now written 14 books on the subject of 9/11. And man, was I turned around. I mean, I'm a flag waving Reagan Republican. I wanted to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and get those bastards that did this to us. But I was angry. Huh?
Yeah, sure. Third stage of grief.
Yeah, I was just really angry. But then my anger turned I just felt my whole world turning upside down after I became aware of the evidence that we're going to talk about today relative to these 3 skyscrapers and their destruction. They're a very explosive, incendiary destruction. I began to get real angry that I'd been deceived, that the whole world had been deceived by the media, by our own government. The whole world, actually, many countries going to war in the Middle East because of these attacks. We were emotionally manipulated in this false flag operation.
Well, let's get to that, but let's explore the evidence a little bit here. I heard rumblings about from different people that I kind of put into the crazy category, not consciously, but just subconsciously. I was like, I'm a big JFK assassination buff. I've studied it for 60 years. Our listeners are tired of hearing me talk about it, so I won't go back into it. But I delved into JFK's assassination with all fours, and have read and watched and listened to just about everything I could get my hands on. And part of my reluctance was I just couldn't handle another obsession, and I didn't have the bandwidth to consume myself into 9/11. But it wasn't really until in the last 6 months I watched Kurt Weldon, the former U.S. congressman. I think he's from Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
he was a retired fireman. He went into the Congress and served with distinction for 10 or 12 years, and then he started asking questions about 9/11. And damned if this intelligence community did not run him out of Congress. They found somebody to primary him, and and this is from him, not me. He concluded that they just flat out got him because they didn't like the narrative and the talk track that he was starting to go into. And the thing that really that got my attention, and you alluded to it, was Building 7. And Building 7, I just can't think of any explanation that could explain it now that I've looked into it more carefully than a controlled demolition. But you tell us, Mr. Gage, what your observations were. Let's start with Building 7 and work backwards, if you could.
Because this is what got Kurt Weldon, former congressman, so upset. One of the many things that he was upset about. He knew that this was a controlled demolition. He and Senator Ron Johnson, both of whom will be keynoting the 9/11 Truth Conference called "Turning the Tide: Justice for 9/11." This is happening in Washington, and September 10th through the 11th. And it's live streamed by Clayton Morris on his redacted platform, the entire 3-day conference. So this is pretty exciting. I'm going to be talking about Building 7 in detail there. And if you want to show this building coming down on your screen, everybody can see it themselves. This is a 47-story skyscraper, part of the World Trade Center complex.
Yeah, and it just got very little recognition or knowledge. Is that the live stream? Anthony's just putting it up there now, and we're watching it.
Okay, so this is easily the tallest building in most of our states, and after witnesses heard explosions, I'm talking a half a dozen witnesses, all of which are denied by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which Congress had tasked with explaining all 3 collapses to the American people. They say it came down by fire. Well, look at it. It comes down smoothly, symmetrically straight down all of a sudden into its own footprint in under 7 seconds at free fall.
So, most people with two eyes and a brain are going to watch that and conclude that fire, there's no smoke, there are no flames. We saw smoke, we saw flames in 9/11, we saw planes go into the buildings, but we don't see anything here. And what I've understood was that they claimed that this building came toppling down because of shrapnel and debris that hit it from the Twin Towers. Well, that's just intellectually you just can't get there.
Well, there was some of the beams that were ejected out of the Twin Towers, which we'll get to in a moment, that did cause some damage to this building. But even NIST says this is not a significant factor in the building's collapse. What was normal office fires? We're told 7 years later, the report came out citing normal office fires brought this building down due to thermal expansion of long span beams on the other corner than that got hit. In other words, the building didn't tip over like you'd expect from the damage on the southeast corner, but nor did it topple over the other way from the damage that NIST says it endured in the northeast corner. So either way, we would expect the building to tip over if it was going to fall due to either set of damage. But no, it dropped straight down uniformly at free fall acceleration. That's as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. The bowling ball had no resistance underneath it. This building had 40,000 tons of structural steel framing in it that was 3 to 5 times stronger than it ever needed to be to support this building. So it should not even have started to collapse unless there was something else going on. I mentioned witnesses heard explosions. Well, NIST said there's no witnesses of explosions. Well, we show dozens of them on our website at richardgage911.org. And we show those explosions, we show the witnesses of explosions, and we show the NIST report. Now, the computer model on the right is from NIST. NIST tells us that here's what happened. These long span beams caused this progressive collapse because they expanded, pushing a girder off of its seat on a particular column, number 79. And then they say this instability traveled laterally up to the roof, and that's why the penthouse collapsed, the east penthouse at the top, and which is actually an isolated event and completely separate, caused by explosions, which is provable. And so their computer model actually begins to tip over, and so they stop it. They don't want us to see that their computer model, which they claim matches quite well with the video, which it doesn't at all, it begins to tip over and crumple up like a beer can. Well, that's what you'd expect in any kind of a natural collapse, but that's not what we see in the video. Professor Leroy Halsey of the University of Alaska has done his own 4-year finite element analysis. He says the only way I could get this building to collapse was not by fire, because he modeled the same fires that NIST had in this building. It was by taking out all the columns in the building, floor by floor. The interior columns first, within a fraction of a second of each other, and then the exterior columns on the same floor about a second later. Any deviation in that pattern in the building would begin to tip over, but that's not what we see in the video. And that's what we see, though, in most every controlled demolition.
Yeah, that was my thought. I've seen this movie before, and we watched the buildings being taken down in the middle of very concentrated urban areas, and they fall and implode right into themselves. But it's a marvel of engineering that they're able to put the dynamite or whatever the explosives are that will result in that. And this looks just like that. I have to agree.
It's precision.
You and Congressman Weldon are not the only people who believe these things. Evidently, you have 3,600 architects and engineers who have signed a petition that demand a second investigation into 9/11. Is that right?
Yeah, not only for Building 7, but the Twin Towers as well. They have huge questions. We're talking what we don't have available to show the audience today, because of the format we're in, is the overwhelming evidence of what did bring this building down. Not only did witnesses hear explosions before the building came down, but we have evidence of extreme heat, pools of molten iron and steel from World Trade Center 7 provided by FEMA in their original study in May of 2002, before NIST took over the investigation and threw out this evidence from their report, which came out later. 7 years after 9/11, in the case of Building 7, what did the FEMA find in this metallurgical examination of the steel? Silver dollar size holes, hot sulfur corrosion attack on the steel, liquid iron, that's molten iron, invading the steel. Well, where does all that come from? It doesn't come from office fires, and it certainly doesn't come from jet fuel. Jet fuel is not a factor in Building 7. It wasn't hit by a plane, but even in the Twin Towers, jet fuel burns only 600 to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a problem for the official story.
I burn it in my airplane every time I fly. And you're right. It's about 650 to 700 degrees. And that's in a very confined space where the heat is really not able to get expelled real easily. I mean, it is at one point, and that's what provides the propulsion coming out of the back of the engine and spinning those turbines.
And it's burning a lot hotter inside that engine. I'm talking about open air.
Yes.
The manufacturer and engineers say 600 degrees Fahrenheit and open air. I mean, this is about the same temperature as fires burning, but they only burn about 600 degrees. NIST claims 1,400 degrees, but we have melted steel. That's 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit that steel is melted at. And so we have pools of molten iron. We have molten iron pouring out of the South Tower minutes prior to its collapse. We have molten iron droplets, billions of them found by the U.S. Geological Survey in all the studies of the dust. Previously, molten iron microspheres. Well, iron, we haven't used iron in our skyscrapers for 100 years. Where's all this molten iron, Fe, elemental iron, not steel? Where's it coming from? The EPA doesn't know, but they call it a signature element of the World Trade Center dust. It's not even molten. It's not even World Trade Center dust unless it has all these previously molten iron microspheres in it. Where do they come from? Molten iron is the byproduct of thermite. Thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. So you have the evidence of thermite in all of these various forms, and none of the evidence, none of the components of the official narrative can possibly explain this evidence that we're talking about here. Fires don't explain. They can't account for any one of these characteristic features.
So tell us about, if you would, who is NIST? What is NIST, and who comprise NIST? Obviously, a government agency of some sort.
Yeah, they're under the Department of Commerce, whose leadership was changed out when the Bush administration came in, and so was the NIST leadership. They were changed out as well. Dr. Shyam Sunder was appointed to lead this investigation, which they normally don't do investigations of buildings. But they did this one, and they were tasked by Congress to explain all three collapses to the American people. And this is how they did it. In the case of Building 7, normal office fires. It took them 7 years to get to that conclusion. They said, truthfully, we're having trouble getting a handle on Building 7. Well, yeah, any like you said, anybody with a brain can figure out that this is a controlled demolition. You put it next to a controlled demolition side by side. We do on our presentation, and you can't tell the difference.
So what's the acronym NIST stand for? National Institute of something.
Standards and Technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's part of the Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
So are you alleging that it was politicized and that it was not truthful in its reporting?
Absolutely. We've submitted several reports, requests for correction, they're called, when you challenge agencies of the federal government that commit fraud like this. They didn't even recognize, for instance, that they say fire brought it down, but no steel frame, fire protected structure has ever collapsed due to fire.
If they were going to lie, the thing I don't understand is why didn't they just say that, yeah, it was a controlled demolition. And just like Osama bin Laden tried to take down the World Trade Center several years before 9/11 with demolition, they perfected their craft with Building 7 and brought it down several hours after the Twin Towers.
How did they have access to 3 of the most highly secure buildings in the world after the Pentagon? I mean, these were terrorist targets. The Building 7 had the IRS, the CIA, the Department of Defense, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which on the 12th floor, where the fires were worst, lost several of its, lost thousands of files related to hundreds of very high-profile cases that it was pursuing against WorldCom and Enron. So those frauds upon the American people, the investigation of them was stopped on 9/11, along with many other investigations. This was a multifaceted false flag operation that we're talking about here.
Wow. Let's look at the Twin Towers if we can. Are you ready to move on and look at the...
Yeah, let's do it. We put the Twin Towers side by side collapsing so we can see the identicality of them, though they were destroyed about 15 minutes apart. And what we noticed immediately is we have upward, outward, arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons each, laterally ejected at 80 miles an hour, laterally, clocked by physicists, landing up to 600 feet in every direction. This is not a building collapsing.
So for our radio audience that does not have the benefit of the video, you can join us on the live stream on getter.com right now, YouTube Live and Facebook Live. But if you're not watching on the live stream, what Mr. Gage is describing is just a showering of debris that is coming out of the top of the World Trade Center laterally. That really does not look like, when I look at it with a critical eye under that lens, it doesn't really look like what you would have expected if a plane had hit the building and it was starting to implode.
Well, the first couple of seconds, we have downward movement of the upper section, but we're told that upper section above the point of plane impacts drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself.
Okay, so what's the matter with that hypothesis?
Well, we don't see any upper section driving the rest of the building down. It's gone after a couple of seconds. And even while it's going down, we don't see it driving anything down. It's telescoping in on itself. That happens before this particular video. And we show that at richardgage911.org. But then within 3 seconds, this is what we see. A progression of hundreds and hundreds of explosions blowing out these exterior structural steel perimeter framing sections, so laterally impaling themselves in all the skyscrapers around the building, well outside the footprint of the building. So how are they even available to crush the building below if, in fact, as we see in the aerial photos, all of the steel has been distributed in a 1,400-foot diameter about each tower. So it's not available to crush the steel. That's a third of the weight of this building. And guess what? It's not the concrete either, because what we see in these videos is the pulverization in midair of 90,000 tons of concrete in each building. It is then it's pulverized and distributed laterally across lower Manhattan in a 3 square mile area from river to river in a blanket 3 inches thick. That's where the concrete is. 30% of that blanket is concrete. Well, wait a minute. If the concrete is delivered in a 3 square mile area, how is it available to crush the building below? It can't, and it's not. We don't see any stacks of 110 floors or 50 or 20 or 1 each that was an acre in size. They are gone, and we're seeing them being gone in these incredible clouds of pulverized concrete. So there's 90,000 tons of concrete in each building that's not available to crush it either. Together with the steel, that is 2/3 the weight of the building. Not available, but used by NIST in their fraudulent calculation, subcontracted to Zdenek Bazant of Northwestern University in Chicago, who used not only all of that weight to crush the building below, but doubled it up above the point of plane impacts and decreased the column strength below the point of plane impacts by a factor of 3. Completely fraudulent. And yet that remains the key theoretical basis for NIST's column failure theory.
My God. If 9/11 was really gut-wrenching and hard to watch, the information that you're delivering here today is all of that to the 10th power. I mean, it is just overwhelming to me to think that that we have been led to believe that people that brought these buildings down, might possibly not be the people that did it. Is that the inference?
There we go. Did Muslim fundamentalist hijackers have access to these 3 buildings? Again, the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon. Terrorist targets. Did they have access to plant explosives in here or plant incendiaries? Because we have evidence of both. What can pulverize concrete floors? Well, nanothermite, which is found in all the World Trade Center dust by a team of 8 international scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen, they find in all of their 7 samples these curious red-gray chips. They thought they were paint at first, but they examine them and they find that they have the ingredients of thermite in the red layer, which are aluminum and iron oxide. And they find that when they burn these chips, they ignite, producing an exothermic reaction, proving their thermitic material. They found through examining the chips and that the particles in them are at the nanoscale, iron oxide and aluminum powder. And that when they're 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of human hair, these tiny particles. This is a highly engineered substance, which, by the way, when they put in a differential scanning calorimeter, a DNC, they ignite, producing what? Not only exothermic reaction, but molten iron microspheres, which the U.S. Geological Survey found billions of in all of their World Trade Center samples, didn't know where they came from. Molten iron, again, is the byproduct of thermite, one of them. The other byproduct, by the way, is aluminum oxide ash. And that's also what we're seeing trailing these structural steel sections. Structural steel is not flammable in office fire conditions. Why are they trailing thick white smoke clouds? Well, this is the aluminum oxide ash that is the other byproduct of thermite. So they conclude in their 25-page peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal that the red layer of these dual-layered red-gray chips is active thermitic material or pyrotechnic or explosive. There's a blur between those two categories. So this was out since 2009, and we've given it to every Congress member at least on 2 occasions, and many other occasions with the other materials, including the petition that you mentioned, to them. And we've been working on them for 19 years altogether with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, the organization I founded. And we now have a sitting senator who's the chair of the select subcommittee, the Senate subcommittee on investigations, Senator Ron Johnson, who is in a position to obtain subpoena power, who has already begun investigations, as you know, into the false disease and the false solution for it that we've been provided over the last 4 years. Well, now he's going after 9/11, and he's keynoting our conference, Turning the Tide 9/11 Justice in 2025. That's going to be in Washington, D.C., and that's going to be September 10th through the 12th. And we have the live stream if you can't make it to D.C. So just visit richardgage911.org for more information. You can watch for free this 3 days of conference, keynoted by not only Senator Ron Johnson, but Kurt Weldon, Dennis Kucinich, John Kiriakou, and a host of other engineers, architects, and folks who really care about waking up the American people that we've been scammed in this false flag operation. America attacked itself.
How did they think they could get away with it? How did they think they could do this and the truth not eventually come out?
Well, look at it. I asked the same question. I mean, look at that. Doesn't even look like a collapse of a building.
No, it really doesn't. It looks like an explosion.
20% of the people were skeptical right off the bat. Maybe that's risen to 40%. But when you have the mainstream media not questioning, but censoring the truth, censoring the truth and not questioning the official narrative. No, this is brand new stuff, right? Well, we have they drummed up the march to war in the Middle East. 2 countries have been invaded. Now about 5, including Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the other countries which have been destabilized. In fact, almost all 7 have been attacked, which General Wesley Clark announced 2 weeks after 9/11 publicly on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, that this paper that he was shown by a friend, a general that used to work for him, he was a NATO commander, but Donald Rumsfeld had just issued this, and he said, look at this, they're going to take out 7 countries in the next 5 years, not just Afghanistan and Iraq. This was all planned in order to gain access in the Middle East. Why? Well, we have 90% of the world's opium coming from Afghanistan, and the production shot up. The Taliban has shut the opium production down to 185 metric tons when they came into power. After we kicked them out, it shot down. It went up to 2,800 metric tons, and then 3,500 metric tons, and then 6,500 metric tons per year. Guess what happens when we got kicked out of Afghanistan a couple of years ago? The Taliban shut down the opium production back down to less than 200 metric tons. So that all under our watch.
Are you inferring that our own government played a role in the production of opium and opioids in Afghanistan? Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, if you call the CIA representative of our government, most people who do research into their activities find that they're a rogue international criminal mafia. and working with other intelligence agencies around the world. That appears to have been what's going on. Read The Politics of Heroin.
Well, why do we permit it?
Because we don't know. Our people perish for lack of knowledge. And that's what we're doing here together, John.
Well, what about our leaders? What about Ron Johnson and Senator Kennedy?
Well, Senator Johnson and Kurt Weldon are among those, and Dennis Kucinich demanding a new investigation into 9/11.
Now, Dennis Kucinich, where is he from? Isn't he the governor? Wasn't he the governor of
Cleveland.
Ohio?
He was the sitting congressman for Ohio. He was the mayor of Cleveland for many, many years. And he is a truth teller.
The rhetoric is great, but where's the damn action?
Yeah.
All we hear is talk, talk, talk. I want action. I want accountability. But why do they not confront the intelligence community that I think is causing our federal government to be rotten to its core?
The intelligence community owns the media.
That's a fact.
We have the statement by its former director that everyone in the media of any significance is under the control of the CIA. The media is not our friend. It is, in fact, the enemy of the people because it is not owned by the people. It's owned by the corporations who pay it, including Pfizer. 70% of their budget comes from the big pharma.
I don't think we begin to appreciate the influence of the federal government in the media. We learned from Matt Taibbi that the FBI paid Twitter to censor people and cancel them if they spoke differently than the company narrative, I'll say, in COVID and the vaccine. We learned that Politico has received $10 million just in the form of subscriptions from people in the federal government that we paid $75,000 and $100,000 for these subscriptions, and it just really it's bad. It is bad. They've co-opted the media and made them basically the Politburo, and that's a sad day in America to me.
Yeah, so we're becoming the media. There are many, many more podcasters who are watched than are on the media. Collectively, we're getting the truth out on a decentralized basis. It's pretty exciting times for this global general wake up that people like you are doing by interviewing people who are talking about the evidence of 9/11 truth. I mean, we've been talking about forensic scientific evidence today, and there's a whole lot more. We've got 2 hours of this information, all of which is equally mind-blowing, including the evidence for foreknowledge of Building 7's collapse. We know it's a controlled demolition, but we know that if it's a controlled demolition, people are talking about it in advance. We're told by people that caught on CNN saying the building's going to blow up, flame and debris coming down. We have several witnesses that said, that'll be coming down about 5 o'clock. We have the announcement of the collapse of this building 20 minutes before it happened by Jane Stanley on the BBC. They apologized for this grievous error, announcing the collapse of a building which is still standing right behind her, citing the confusing events of the day.
Is it true that the owner of the World Trade Center bought a significant amount of insurance
that was never there before
9/11?
In fact, the ownership of the World Trade Center changed hands. The Twin Towers and the other 6 buildings, he already owned Building 7 and had developed it, Larry Silverstein, so they essentially offered it to them. 6 weeks before 9/11, it changed from public hands to private hands. Yes, he put in massive terrorist insurance, and there was a $5 billion liability because the New York City was forcing the Port Authority to abate the asbestos in the building according to federal law. And so that was a $5 billion liability that Larry Silverstein was taking on. Did he know that his free asbestos abatement was coming in just 6 weeks?
Also, in the aftermath of 9/11, they really I mean, miraculously cleaned it up in what I consider to be record time. Is my memory correct that they sent all the debris to China?
Yes, before forensic investigators could get their hands on it and do a proper investigation, this debris was sent starting just 2 weeks after 9/11 on trucks that were lined up down the street to be taken to the landfill and then sent to China for recycling. This is the illegal destruction of evidence in a crime scene.
My gosh. I also remember that if people went down to the World Trade Center site and some people picked up pieces of steel or articles of the building, and they were really prosecuted aggressively. The story was that was hugely disrespectful to the over 3,000 people who died there that day. But now, in hindsight, you wonder if it wasn't for other reasons that they wanted to contain this evidence and did not want to allow it to get out.
Yeah, well, that's clear. The evidence of the steel had molten iron on the ends of the beams. The evaporation of the metal decking, 110 floors of it, the lightweight steel joists which supported that, and the concrete floors poured up above, all essentially evaporated. Jonathan Barnett says the ends of the steel beams were partly evaporated in extraordinarily high temperatures. He's the FEMA author, a fire protection engineer. It takes 4,000 degrees to evaporate steel. What does thermite burn at? 4,500 degrees. So yes, it can account for all of that. What's going to pulverize 90,000 tons of concrete? Well, we learned from the American Society of Testing Materials report 856 that concrete can pulverize to its powder, decomposed hydration products at just 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's half the temperatures that were available with nanothermite, which could have been sprayed on the bottom of the concrete floors because this is liquid applied, dual layered red-gray chips they found. Well, it could have been applied under false pretenses, such as the fireproofing upgrade that Kevin Ryan had found was going on in the months and years before 9/11. Fireproofing upgrades. Could it have been nanothermite that was applied there? So we need a real investigation with subpoena power to get to the bottom of these issues.
Where do you think Donald Trump is on this? Do you think he's privy to this information, and do you think he's looked at it?
He is now. Kurt Weldon inspired us to write a 9-page presidential commission on 9/11. He's calling upon President Trump, and he's given this to him and all of his aides to enact a real investigation from the presidential level. He's not satisfied that Congress is going to not be corrupted. So we have done that, and this 9-page document is available on our website. Also has all the evidence there. Richard Gage, 911.org. Better yet, 911legacy.org. And that website is easier to find that particular document at, and what you can do with it, i.e. take it to your congressman, to the media. It is a powerful document signed not only by members in the 9/11 Truth Movement, Kurt Weldon, but firefighters, many of them, and also the deputy director of the Emergency Operations Center in Building 7 on the 23rd floor, the bunker that was designed to handle an emergency like this, but that building was abandoned. And so Richard Rotan's is listed on that document, also calling for a new investigation.
And you're saying that what building was abandoned?
Building 7 was evacuated after the planes hit the towers, both planes, but well before it came down.
Yes.
And interestingly, in that in-between time, Barry Jennings and Mayor Giuliani's attorney, Michael Hess, were trying to get to a meeting that they were late to on the 23rd floor, not realizing the entire building had been evacuated. They were told to get out of there. there's bombs in that building. So they're trying to get out, and they're being blown up inside the building at about the 6th floor, and they couldn't get down any further. They were trapped in the building by these explosions. And this is before either tower came down.
My gosh. Well, I would think that Howard Lutnick would be someone that would be receptive to receiving information about this. He certainly was there that day. I guess maybe he wasn't there that day, but many of his employees of his firm were there and tragically lost their lives. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. I mean, this is some pretty heavy stuff, Richard. I am just, and unfortunately, I would love to play devil's advocate with you and try and pick your theory apart, but unfortunately, it just all has the ring of truth, and it is congruent with what we see in the videos. And I think that obviously the truth is starting to seep out. And I share your concern about the intelligence community in this country, and I guess around the world. They seem to have a stranglehold on our governments, and it does need to stop. I think the only way for that to happen is for all of us to join hands and demand transparency, shine light on it, and get our leaders to come forward. I would think that, I wonder where the people are that did this stuff. I mean, where are the whistleblowers that participated in planning the explosives? Or do you think they're foreign actors, or are they inside our country? I mean, when JFK, the assassination started to unravel, we really had a lot of whistleblowers. People were saying, well, when's somebody going to make a deathbed confession? Well, they actually already had, like E. Howard Hunt. And
they were suicided, at least a dozen of them.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. But
that's a problem.
But where are the whistleblowers here?
Well, maybe they were suicided too. We don't know. We do know that 5 Israelis were caught dancing on the top of the parking garage in an apartment building across the river, and holding up a lighter in front of the burning tower and dancing for joy.
Yeah.
And they were later arrested by the FBI. Dick Chertoff released them a couple of months later back to Israel, where they went on a TV show, and acknowledged we were there to document the event.
Good God.
How did they know about that?
How would you know? And and John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, signed visas for 4 of the terrorists for their entry into the United States. Now that's a little factoid that I'd like to have some more data around.
Yeah, he was the head of the Jeddah, Saudi Arabia intelligence unit, and they were overriding several people who were saying, hey, you don't want these characters in America. And J. Michael Springman wrote a whole book about it, that he was being overridden by the CIA.
Fascinating, demonic, maddening, hugely sad, and disappointing information that you brought us today. But thank you for doing so. And you really obviously have devoted inordinate amounts of time on this, and appear to be dedicating your life to getting the truth out. And for that, we are grateful. And I hope the truth will come out, and I hope we can get some accountability. And maybe this will be the catalyst once and for all to follow the roots back to whoever and reform. I think that is certainly.
Let the chips fall where they may.
That's it. Exactly. Richard Gage, he is an architect and the leader of the effort to get the truth out on 9/11. You can find him at richardgage911.org. Richard Gage, Gage 911.org. Thank you, Richard Gage, for coming on today. We'll look forward to watching your summit in Washington later, soon, in like 2 weeks in September.
Yep. And if you can't come, again, watch it on Redacted with Clayton Morris. It'll be live the entire 3 days.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of your weekend. And again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, John.